To understand Inca art and architecture, I think we have to start with stone because stonework is their most famous form of creations, and it also reveals most clearly the aesthetics, the ideas of what the Inca believed to be beautiful and perhaps also to be good. So it's a source for understanding Inca aesthetics or ideas of beauty, and it is found in stonework. Particularly, the most famous form is elite dressed stonework. And what that means is you take a stone and you work the edges of it. You lay it next to another piece of work stone and you lay it without mortar. How do you do this? Well, with a lot of effort. It is created by abrasion, working the surface of one stone until it precisely fits the border with its neighbor. The stonework that is created is irregular in shape. It has many sides, and it also is created with beveled edges. And that's important. The edges themselves are kind of recessed. What that does is stress the joints, the place where the stones come together, and we do get a reflection of light versus dark, contrast of light versus dark, which tends to convey Andean ideas about duality. And our textbook author, Stone, also says, quote unquote, it activates the surface. So it enlivens the surface, so it's not simply a flat wall. The stones themselves often end up having a slightly rounded, bowing projected surfaces that rise away from the beveled edges. There might also be irregular protrusions on the surfaces of the stones. This is done on purpose. It's part of the aesthetic, and it allows the creator to leave the stone in a condition that is closer to its natural form. People who talk about Inca stonework often talk about the joints being incredibly tight, and that is true. If the monument under consideration has not been damaged over time, the joints will still, even today, be so tight that you won't be able to put a dime between them, or perhaps you could be more modern and think of a credit card, but it would be impossible to insert something that thin. The stones themselves are worked with, and I have it in quotes, stone hammers. That simply means they're being worked with other stones, which is the primary way in which the Inca shaped these products. The walls that the Inca create, because they are laid without mortar and because they fit so tightly together, are able to resist earthquakes very effectively. This is going to be something that we'll see when we get to the Coricancha, in particular, the premier temple located in Cuzco. Each stone also is embedded into its neighbor, locked together, and that I think can remind us of collectivity, all parts coming together into a whole. For the Inca also, the stone itself is revered, it is respected, it is believed to have a life force. Stones also play a really major role in the creation myths of the Inca. The first creation myth, when the Inca are making their way to Cuzco, along the way they're going to lose some of the members of their tribe, and those members will turn into stones. The stones also are believed to be able to transform into humans, and when Pachacuti was battling the Chanca, the stones, it's said, came to life and fought on the side of Pachacuti, that becoming essentially another creation myth, an origin story for the formation of the Inca Empire. We have in Inca stonework then a really close link with nature and a sense of oneness with the land itself being sacred. The stones are carved, but not completely. It's almost as if the carver is coming along and releasing a form, but respecting nature while shaping the stone. So allowing nature to speak at the same time that the human being is speaking. So we end up with contradictions when describing these stones, like referring to them as being organic, and by that I mean naturally shaped, referring back to nature, and geometric at the same time, and by that I mean crafted by human beings all at once. Each one of the stones also is completely unique. So it is its own entity. It's as if each of the stones is a living and participating in the natural world within the total creation that the Inca make. They also, as they're doing this, I think you can recognize, are creating abstractions, abstract surface pattern, abstract design, and often on the landscape, in particular with the terracing that the Inca create as they literally shape the mountainsides around other regions of Cusco and beyond. You should take a look at Stone, the author. How interesting that her name is Stone. The author of our book on page 210 for the world's longest list of adjectives about Inca stonework. And I'd like to just take one moment to read these to you because this is a woman who loves stone. She's talking about Inca stone crafting with the following description: practical, beautiful, organic, geometric, standardized, individual, reproducible, elitist, technologically simple, and incomparably elegant. The wall epitomizes Inca aesthetics. It also, she goes on, says that it reflects statements of Agni and Tinku. I think all of that is true. Let me go over these words with you. Every piece of stonework that the Inca ever made is practical. It serves a purpose, it was intended to last, and it holds up under earthquake conditions in the Andes. It also, at least to my eyes, I'm a stone lover too, is very beautiful. It appears to be organic, respecting nature, but at the same time follows geometric shapes and forms, and clear outlines and beveled edges. It in some ways is standardized. The technology certainly is, but at the same time, each and every stone is individual. Yes, it's reproducible. The technology, again, can be used to create other worked stones or dressed stones, and it definitely is elitist. This form of stonework was for the best of the Inca creations and would be reserved for palaces, for example, and for really important temples like the Coricancha. It is technologically simple. It does, however, at the same time, require an enormous amount of labor. So the construction of Inca monuments made out of stone would have been made possible by mita practices. That's the labor tax that would be provided by individual members of the Inca community. And last, incomparably elegant. And if nothing else, the simplicity, the practicality of Inca creations, I would like you to take away that there is an elegance in the forms that the Inca produce and leave behind in their empire. Let's take a look at just a couple examples of Inca stonework. The first one would be on our left, figure 168 in our textbook. It is Tambo Makai, and Tambo just means a way station. It's one of these many way stations along the Inca road that would have allowed the runners to move quickly from place to place, as well as administrators and members of the army or the military, and others as well. This way station has a crafted, and that is man-made or human-made, doorway, and it is trapezoidal. We're going to look at a better example when we get to Sacsayhuaman because it will have its capstone or lintel on the top of it. But this is a carefully crafted human endeavor, creating the frame of a door. And what do you see when you look inside? You see a number of small stones surrounding a large and very irregular stone, almost as if the Inca, out of respect for nature and for the reverence that they have for stone, have decided not to tame that one as much as the others, as if making a statement about working within nature and embracing nature at the same time. That is totally Inca. The one on the top right, which comes from another way station, is carved out of the living rock, and it is a fountain. The Inca were amazing hydraulic engineers, able to move water to places so that it would be easily accessible to people, channeling from mountain streams. And in this case, what we have is a very elegantly carved set of geometric forms and lines that allow the water to flow down from the center. And the shapes, if you go up right here, you're going to see actually that they are stepped so that they do in fact reflect the shape of a mountain. The mountains, of course, are the source for the water, so that the fountain, a stream of water, seems to be supported by the mountain and echoed with geometric shapes behind it in a very elegant, very simplified, very geometric manner, but also in a very natural manner at the same time. Lower right. This is figure 188. It's from Ingapirca, which is a site of the Inca. As at the end of their expansion, they were attempting to put in a second capital area within the location of Ecuador, just to show you that the stonework is all over the place in the empire. Let's take a look now at the most famous stone from Peru. It is the 12-angled stone, and I have two pictures of it on our right. I am not quite certain why this particular stone is so famous, except that when you're walking through the streets of Cusco, it's easy to find, and there's usually somebody standing next to it to try and point it out to you. You can count the angles along this, and I'll show you an image again in a second that'll make it easier to do that. The other is one of the most famous of the stones at Sacsayhuaman. There are lots and lots of them. It's this one right here, and it is Sacsayhuaman that we'll go to next. I just want you to see the scale of some of these. That is me standing next to it, and please remember that I'm 5 feet even. This is a huge stone. These are images that will literally outline and color in some of these Inca stones to give you a sense of how these are laid together, becoming a unified whole. And you will see the 12-angled stone, which is located on the right. And you can watch it be outlined, and you can watch the form shape. In some ways, I actually find the upper left image more interesting, because we have a series of stones completely different that are embedded, all of them with beveled edges fitting together into a whole. And then at the region of the lower left, what you're seeing is the 17-angled stone, which is just crazy. This is very symmetrically put into position with other stones embedded into it in a very elegant and in a very Inca manner. But this is the kind of stonework that people rave about when it comes to the Inca.